So I decided to name my to name my lecture the wooden star, because the primary mode of production, the primary medium of production is wood, as it has had traditionally been the case in the region, and star because of the 8-pointed Najmat al-Quds, the sacred Islamic star emblem. So let us begin with the lecture with a brief introduction. Just give me a moment. So if we have to realize the geographic proximity of the region that I'm talking of, then the red dot right here is what signifies Chamba, which is situated in the bosoms of the Western Himalayas, as we can see here. So here lies Chamba. This would be Lahore, one of the most prominent cultural centers back in the Mughal era. And this is Delhi, also Shahjahanabad, because when the region becomes relevant to the territory of Chamba, so Shah Jahan has already erected his royal capital over here, and here is Agra, which never directly had an influence over the society and culture of Chamba, but still it is important to consider this region as well, given the significance of the monuments which were erected over here. But for our brief conversation right here, we shall be focusing predominantly on Lahore, which is geographically very close to Chamba, and this is how a cross-cultural exchange could be possible back in the day. So as Chamba was a small principality, and small principalities like Chamba always require a larger power, a greater power to look after its petty affairs, especially when it comes to defense and resources. And in the older times, in the early medieval era, Kashmir played that role. So in order to give a brief history of Chamba, the Brahmapura state was established by Raja Meru of the Varmana dynasty. I have not given the dates because the claims are contested, but this happened somewhere in the mid 6th century. And Brahmapura, which is now known as Bharmor, was the center of the power of the Chamba dynasty back in the day. And the capital was shifted from Brahmapura to Champakapura, which became Chamba with the passage of time, in somewhere in the 10th or 11th century by Raja Sahila. And again, I've decided not to mention the exact date because the details are unknown and the claims are contested. And from as early as the 10th century, the Rajas of Chamba had allied with the Kingdom of Kashmir, which claimed suzerainty over Chamba and its neighboring hill states, as always was the case. And the names of the Rajas of Chamba, which include Asatavarmana, who reigned in 1080 current era, Jasata Varmana, and Udaya Varmana, they find regular mentions in the Raj Tarangani, as they played the role of a mercenary or a political general who carried forward the military expeditions of Kashmir into faraway lands, including present-day Ladakh and western parts of Tibet. So as Chamba was in the cultural and geographic vicinity of Kashmir, of course, unidirectional cultural exchange certainly took place. And the primary example that we get to see are the stone and bronze sculptures of Chamba. So on the left right here, we have a 9th century Garuda Rudha, which is Vishnu riding a Garuda from Kashmir. And here we have an equivalent from Chamba. So here is Vishnu riding Garuda, and then the Narasimha face, the lion face, and the Varaha face can be seen, as is the case in its Kashmir counterpart as well. And the influence is highly evident, and there is no need to have another second thoughts regarding the cross cultural exchange that we are witnessing over here. Here is another example. I shall go through these quickly and reach to the Islamic portion. So this is just to give a slight idea how Chamba had always been influenced by foreign forces. So this is a Vaikuntha Vishnu Murti, also known as Vaikuntha Vishnu Chaturmurti. This is in bronze, and here we can see Vishnu standing. And the influence is highly similar. So this is not the same image, but this is a Devi from Chaturadi in Chamba. And we are able to carve out a direct connection between these two. And we can see the way in which they are standing, and the headgears, the jewelry, a lot of things are similar in these two cases. And the exact Vaikuntha Vishnu Chaturmurti is one of the most finest example of these of Vishnu Vaikuntha Chaturmurti is presently at Chamba in the form of the Lakshmi Narayana idol, uh, which was constructed somewhere in the 10th century or in the 11th century, as a matter of fact. And here we can see Vishnu standing erect, and then we have the lion head and the boar head at front, and then we have the Virat Murti in the back, the monstrous or the fearsome appearance of Vishnu. And this is again a direct influence of Kashmir over the art activity which was happening at Chamba back in the day. And then the bronze sculptures then paved way for the stone sculptures as well, the later stone tradition. And in this case right here, which is Rama and Sita enthroned, we are able to see that their physical proportions, bodily proportions, reveal to us that there had been a major influence of the bronze tradition on the stone sculptures as well. So this was the influence of Kashmir on the art of Chamba, the first half of foreign in the art influence in the region. And then after the fall of Kashmir, or rather after Kashmir went into the state of civil war and the establishment of the Shahmir dynasty took place, Chamba, in a way, stopped all its ties with Kashmir, seized its ties with Kashmir, and the period between 1150 to 1550, these 400 years are somewhat known as the era of isolation, when Chamba had completely stopped any sort of contact with external forces, be it military, diplomatic, or art related. So after these 400 years of isolation, the first instance in which Chamba came into contact with an outer force was when it became a tributary of the Mughal Empire during the reign of Pratap Singh Varmana. And Pratap Singh Varmana was succeeded by uh, Veervahanu, and Veervahanu was succeeded by Balabhadra. Balabhadra was succeeded by Janardhan. And it is during the reign of Janardhan Varmana that Jahangir visited the neighboring state of Nurpur in 1622. And the Mughal emperor was waited on by the hill chiefs, and among them, references made in Tuzke Jahangiri to the Raja of Chamba. What Jahangir writes about Chamba in 1622 current era is, at this station, the offering of the Raj of Chamba was inspected. His land is 25 kos from Kangra, and there is no zamindar mightier than the Raja. The word zamindar has been used here instead of Raja because these were petty chieftains and were not recognized as kings by the by the Mughal imperial court. His land is an asylum for all the zamindars of these areas because it has defiles that are so difficult to negotiate. Until now, he has neither paid homage to any monarch or sent any tribute. His brother also paid homage and performed the ritual of subservience and allegiance on the zamindar's behalf. He seemed rather urbane and intelligent, and he was received with shows of favor. So this shows that the Raj of Chamba was taken into high regard by the Mughal, and this is also the very first instance when a direct contact has been established between these two political entities. So after the meeting with Jahangir, in 1623, conflict started emerging between Nurpur and Chamba, which resulted in Chamba's subjugation under Nurpur for 18 years. So the students who were part of the Takri's symposium might be aware with Nurpur and how the political disturbance had created some sort of a havoc in mid 17th century. Bhai Singh, who was the 4-year-old son of Janardhan, is secretly taken to Mandi by his wet nurse Batlo and is raised in the foster care of Raja Hari Sen of Mandi. 18 years later, Prithvi Singh aids the Mughal army in the expedition against Nurpur and reconsolidates his power in Chamba, freeing the state from Nurpur's stronghold. He is then awarded the rank of Mansab and the Mahe Maratib and the title of Raja. So this is the first time that a Raja of Chamba is actually acknowledged as a Raja, recognized as a Raja by the Mughal imperial throne. And Prithvi Singh visits Shah Jahan 9 times in his life, paving way for Mughal court culture at Chamba. It is said that Prithvi Singh was very close to Dara Shikoh, and he was so handsome that whenever he would visit the Mughal court, the women of the Zanana would ask for his presence. And then Prithvi Singh would be blindfolded and then led towards the Zanana in this state, and so that the Mughal ladies could have their wishes fulfilled. Never mind. So this is among the first instances that we get of Mughal influence being felt in the architecture of Chamba. So here, as I was mentioning, is Raja Prithvi Singh standing. Opposing him is either Darashiko or Shah Jahan, as identified by different people. He could also be Murad Bakhsh, the son of Shah Jahan, who was present with Darashiko at the time of the uh, the military expedition of Nurpur. And Prithvi Singh is holding Mahe Maratib, as I was mentioning previously. And Mahe Maratib is the fish standard, which was usually bestowed upon the Mansab officers. And this was the symbol of Mughal hegemony and Mughal supremacy. And then there are two warriors down there. What is significant in this depiction is the presence of these 8 pointed star symbols, which are known as Najmat al-Quds in Persian or Arabic. So Najmat al-Quds is that sacred Islamic star, 8 pointed sacred Islamic star, which has its own symbolic meanings. And the depiction of these stars and the very installation of this throne in the first administrative office of Prithvi Singh after coming back to power at Chamba suggests that he had wholeheartedly accepted Mughal supremacy, and he had also pledged allegiance to the Mughal emperor. And this is how Mughal symbolism started coming into the mainstream architecture at Chamba. So this is another example that we have right here. This is Prithvi Singh meeting Shah Jahan. So just to create uh, a parallel between Prithvi Singh meeting a Mughal entity, a Mughal symbol of power. So here is Prithvi Singh, young Prithvi Singh with young Dara Shigo or Murad Baksh, and here is slightly older Prithvi Singh with Shah Jahan himself. So these kind of portraits were made in abundance in order to suggest the center of power. And here we can see that connection. And it is safe who were involved with constructing this, pardon me, door right here, were very well familiar with the Mughal art of painting. Here is another example from the same building, the Bharmor Kothi or the Bharmor administrative building of Prithvi Singh. So here is a Rajput chief in the company of a woman, a private gathering. He sits reclining against a bolster in a very Mughal fashion, and his one hand is placed on the ground, as is common in a lot of Chamba paintings belonging to this period. And here, the part of what inspires our attention, what attracts our attention, is the cusped arch right here, which is a symbolic or architectural. Here is another one. Here, this subject matter is Khan and Khanum, which is the Beg, the Mongol, Turco-Mongol sir, lord, with the madam. And here again, we can see that he's reclining against the bolster, and then here is the his female counterpart right here, again sitting underneath a cusped arch. His loose turban suggests that he happens to be of Central Asian origin. Just a study for you to see. And now in this particular piece, what again is significant for our study is this Mughal Karatush. A lot of Mughal paintings of this era. And second is this 10-pointed rosette banner, which is also a recurring element in Timurid and Mughal architectural constructions. Here is the example for the Kortush. As you can see the parallels, here's a sun worshipper, a detail from a Mughal painting. And for these banners, here is a building from Uzbekistan, the facade of a mausoleum. And here we can see that these 10-pointed banners followed by the 8-pointed Najmat al-Quds is a recurring design, which also happens to be the case in this doorway from Chamba. And the same design is also adopted by the Mughals in Delhi. This is a detail from Humayun's tomb, and here also we can see the parallel, that how these all appears to be so similar because they are from the same source. Now, among the first architectural constructions during this period was the wooden temple of Chamunda at Chamba. And this temple is significant for its wood carvings. And yeah, then again, we are able to see that in the wood carvings of Chamunda temple, there is a cherub head uh, inside the eight-pointed Najmatul Quds. And cherubs are not essentially Islamic in nature, rather, the influence has come from European art. Here is another example of cherub head from the Chamunda temple. So it's just a head with wings emerging beneath it. So here is the European counterpart for you to see in the form of an engraving. But the source for this cherub head Chamba is certainly of Mughal origin, as we can see in this painting belonging to the reign of Jahangir, in which Jahangir appears to be embracing Shah Abbas. The two cherub heads supporting the sun and the moon on themselves. So this cherub head of the face of of an adolescent boy, supported by wings, is exactly what we get to see in the cherub heads from the Chamunda temple at Chamba. So this is the source of inspiration. Even though the motif is of European origin, but the medium through which it has come to Chamba is the Mughal art of painting. Another very significant example of this dancing Turk from the same Chamunda temple in the Mughal Karatush, and here is that 10-pointed rosette banner on top. And we know he's Turkish because of his headgear and the huge boots that he is wearing. And again, the source for this figure is also through Mughal painting. And here we have the portrait of the first Mughal emperor in India by the name Babur, and he happens to wear a similar costume with the Turkish boots and the loose turban on his head. And with the passage of time, so this figure right here came from the tradition of Mughal painting and from wood carving. Later, it also had its impact felt in paintings, and this became the source for the iconography of Ragaputra Brahmaranand in Chamba painting. And here we can see the Ragputra wearing those Turkish boots and dancing in not so different or is in not so different manner. So here is that example of those 10-pointed star rosette banners in full detail from the Chamunda temple. The construction was has been done in different phases. The first one might have perhaps been done during the reign of Raja Chhattar Singh in around 1680 to 1690, and the second phase happened during the reign of Raja Umed Singh, perhaps in around 1750 to 1755 CE. The name of Chhattar Singh is of particular significance for our discussion, is because he was born by the name Shatru Singh, and it is said that in around 1678, Aurangzeb had a royal decree carried out in his name that all the Hindu temples in Chamba are to be demolished. And Chhattar Singh, instead of following suit, he rather installed copper gilt pinnacles on top of every single temple in order to suggest that the temples were receiving royal patronage. And because of this deed, he got the name Chhattar Singh for installing those Chhatris on those temples. And even though things had started falling sour between the Chamba territory, the Chamba throne, and the Mughal imperial power, but still those Mughal iconographies and symbols kept on having a recurring manifestation in the architecture of Chamba. So just to suggest another example, here is a hero stone from 16th century. And here we can see that a person and his wife have been depicted within perhaps what appears to be a temple or the inner chamber of the house. They happen to be of Shaivite origin. That is why a linga has been depicted here. And he has that typical Chamba depiction of a deceased male with his hand in Abhay Mudra. And then he has the Bhumi Sparsha with his left hand. 100 years later, or almost 150 years later, we get this example in the form of the hero stone of Raja Uday Singh of Chamba, who was murdered by his own court. And again, iconographically, he has that Abhay Mudra and the Bhumi Sparsha. But a lot has changed ever since. For beginners, let us look at their costumes. This person appears to be wearing something which has been replaced here with the Mughal Jama tied at the left in order to suggest that the person wearing it is of non-Islamic origin. And then he's wearing the sash, patka, and he sits against a large bolster, as we are able to see in a lot of paintings belonging to the reign of Akbar. And the women are also with the Mughal robe. So this is how much influence has come into the regional art of Chamba. And the conical tops of the temple premise have been replaced by the cusped arch in order to suggest that the Raja is in a Jharokha, surrounded by his wives. And then here is the gateway in order to enter this palace, palatial structure. So after the departure, the demise of Uday Singh, a temple was constructed in his memory, as it was said that his ghost used to haunt the royal palace of Chamba. This was erected in around 1720 to 1722 CE by Raja Ugar Singh, his successor, as well as his cousin. And in this temple, the stone temple, for the first time, we are able to see that those same 10 pointed rosette star banners have been used as a decorative motif, which were for the first time seen in the doorway of Bharmor Koti, made by Raja Prithvi Singh. So this was in around 1640, 1645, and this is 1720. The span of 80 years, this has become a recurring and almost, we can say, an integral part of the architecture of Chamba. And now the symbol is no more Mughal in nature. This is just something which the local craftsmen of Chamba have been doing for long, for at least 2 generations now. So here's another example of the Najmat al-Quds, which has been now localized successfully by the artisans. This is the ceiling of the Shakti Dehra temple at Kiani, constructed in the year roughly around 1725. This is in wood. And here we have the Ashtamatrikas depicted on the outer margins. And inside we have that same 10 pointed star banner rosette with the Najmatul Quds star in the center, surrounded on the four ends by different angels, Solomon fairies. So we can see those fairies wearing Mughal costumes, and they have wings coming out of their back, and they're holding different things. Like this one, for starters, is holding a peacock. And these are very similar to the murals at the Lahore fort in Lahore, present day Pakistan. And here we are able to trace the origin of this symbol at Chamba as well. Here is another example. So she's holding a swan, and here is the one with the peacock, but a rather very similar approach. Here again. So she's holding the pandan and other things of vanity, and the same thing is being done here by this fairy as well. And then we have the Mughal art of Petra Dura, which is inlaying precious stones in the architecture in marble in order to suggest decorative designs. Here are two examples. And since it could not be done on such a grand scale at Chamba back in the day, but what the artists have attempted to do, is to emulate the same effect using colors, using miniature painting colors. So this is in the temple of Devi Koti. And here we are able to see that a very similar thing to the Petra Dura has been done in the form of these floral patterns. This is in the year 1754. And these are a few of the things which emerge on the ceilings, the wooden ceilings of the temple of Devi Koti. And here we have again those Solomonic angels holding different things: the rabbit, the peacock, the wine bottle, the wine cup, the wine decanter. And here is a composite animal as well in the form of a. So this is a hawk with the head of man. And then we have the 8-pointed star again, and this surrounds deer or an ibex. So a question which rises here on our study of this more than 100 year of the recurring depiction of Mughal symbols in the architecture of Chamba is, the first question would be, who were the people who designed these things at Chamba? These were definitely not the local artists, because as we are able to see that prior to this introduction of a completely new iconographic language, visual language in Chamba, the work was happening prior to it, had a completely different style, a completely different subject matter, and a completely different technical approach as well, compared to whatever is happening here with the passage of time. The deep cuts have definitely been replaced by bas relief on wood, suggests that the people who had been designing these things were not traditional wood carvers or carpenters. And the person, and in my opinion, the people who designed these woodworks at Chamba were definitely miniature painters trained in the Mughal art of miniature painting. We are able to see that in terms of uh, the techniques which have been employed here, the clothes that they are making, and other different kind of detail which has been put into. And these painters were certainly might have come from Lahore, which explains how for a long time this Lahore visual language is being followed. Being followed at Chamba, especially in the form of these fairies. And in order to solidify our claim, we also find several mentions to the artists who are working at Chamba to be commonly referred to as Tarkhan Chiteras or carpenter painters. So they were painters, and at the same time, they were also indulged with the art of carpentry. And so this is the identity of the people who had designed these forms. Now, the second question which arises to our mind is, why did they choose to work with sort of a visual language? So this could have two answers. The first answer would be that it would not have been possible without any sort of royal patronage to these arts. If a Raja is having these symbols, if a Raja is having any sort of wood carving commission in his temple, then of course he would be familiar with whatever is being made. It is not the case that anything is being presented to him and then he is commissioning those, which leads to the question of these religious imagery. Then I would say that is partially something that we could say yes to, because only two of these rajas have come to our knowledge who had visited Mughals themselves: Raja Prithvi Singh in 1640s and Raja Umed Singh in 1740s, 100 years between them. And none of the other Rajas ever visited Lahore or either Delhi. At least we don't find any reference to this happening. So, were they familiar or not? I would say partially. But the definitely, particularly the angels, have to have some sort of a celestial or extraterrestrial relation. And these have been, I believe, done in order to represent the Gandharvas, which is a very common symbol, in a very common motif in the ceiling designs of Hindu temples. And lastly, the question which comes to our mind was whether these symbols were treated as religious motifs, or were there the lines between religions as solidified or well determined as they are today. And then again, this claim is contested, but personally I would like to say no. Otherwise, even when Raja Chhatr Singh of Chamba was happening having uh, was challenging the orders of Aurangzeb, even at that time, these Mughal cultural influence of Chamba was not completely disregarded. This was not treated as something which is foreign, which has come from outside, or which is something of the other. Rather, these had been assimilated very well into the local visual language of the language of the region. That this, with the passage of time, they stopped being foreign or they stopped being the other. And this is how this explains a lot regarding the political or the religious temperament which was held by the Rajas of Chamba back in that time. So with this, I conclude my discussion on Timurid motifs in the architecture of Chamba. Now, if anybody have questions of their own other than these three that I raised myself, then they are free to ask me. Thank you.